Okay, now we'll speak Dr. Doris Sommer, Ara Joel Williams Professor of Romance Languages and Literatures, Director of Graduate Studies in Spanish, and Director of the Cultural Agents Initiative, Harvard University. She will speak us about introductory remarks on pretexts, literacy, innovation, and citizenship.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful to be here. I've been looking forward to meeting the young generation of leaders in Greece. I'm grateful to Christos for his planning and his flexibility, to Vasiliki for being my colleague now for about a year in Pretext. We met at a teacher training session here at Harvard University at the Derek Bok Center for Teaching and Learning because they invited me to present and train some colleagues in a method that collects popular practices from all over the world to present an easy, replicable, and very effective way to teach children and youth and adults reading skills. Now, why is reading skill an issue in an economic forum? Everything that I've read about economic development, social development, but specifically economic development, uses levels of literacy as an indicator for advance. There's no international report that I've seen that doesn't have levels of literacy. What are we doing to develop levels of literacy as part of an economic development plan is the question. And it's not just the level of literacy, but the kind of literacy that we can improve that's at issue here. One of our colleagues is a young woman from Zimbabwe, Nasima Mohammed, who had a question for her thesis. It was, why does Zimbabwe have over 90% literacy and absolutely desperate situation economically and politically? It doesn't make sense according to any economic indicators internationally. And she studied the issue, and her finding was that the kind of literacy that's promoted in Zimbabwe is still a colonial approach. It is an approach that is conventional, that is content-based, not skill-based, that insists on rote learning, on obedience. There's no debate with material, there's no innovation, and there's no relationship that gets set up among participants. So she brought Pretext to a school in Zimbabwe where teachers normally would hit children, just beat them, because they were sure that it was the only way to control them. It's a neighborhood where unemployment is beyond 90%. So teachers are absolutely convinced that the high school children have no reason to learn, and that's why they don't behave. With Pretexts, the entire atmosphere of the school changed. Because what do we do in Pretexts? We take a text, a difficult text. We used a scene from Sophocles from Antigone when we worked together last year. Today we're going to be using a scene from Oedipus Rex because I know that Vasiliki was just in a debate about Oedipus for political reasons. So we'll just use the scene from there. But we have used passages from Cervantes, from Shakespeare, from Dante, from the law victims in Colombia, from Carl Sagan when we're working with people who think that pretext is only for literary scholars and not for physicists. We can use any text. We use it, as we say, as a pretext to make art. What happens when you have a sonnet by Shakespeare or Petrarch and the teacher says, tomorrow we're going to turn this sonnet into choreographies. Go read it. Do you think people will read it? If they have to dance the next day? And somebody will say, why did you make that turn and not the other? And you have to justify it. They probably will read the sonnet. And then the day after, we have a photography shoot. We're going to make galleries of photos about this sonnet. And the following day, we're going to turn it into a drama. And the following day, we'll make masks. And every day, there's a different activity around the same text. We get deeper and deeper and deeper, and we learn on the ground lots of very sophisticated literary theory and aesthetic theory that I try to teach students with moderate success when I'm not doing pretext and with real success when I'm doing it. For example, any art can be interpreted by any other art. I know this as a student of aesthetics, but when you make that a practice, people learn the material just because they are constantly having to translate it one thing into another. The 21st century is a century where education has to prepare students to be innovative. We've been listening about the need for innovation and about the ability to appropriate innovation when it shows up. What are we doing in our classrooms to make children innovation friendly? If they're sitting in rows, excuse me, my friends, organizers of this conference, if they're sitting in rows like this, and the people in the back are seeing the backs of heads and looking forward, jumping over everybody to see the only one person who's speaking, are we developing democratic habits? Are we developing innovation? What would happen if we sat in a circle and looked at each other while we talked? It looks like a simple difference, but it's the difference that Paulo Freire taught us, the difference that Maria Montessori taught us. Think about Maria Montessori. 120 years ago, she developed this hands-on approach to teaching everything. And she worked with what we call special ed kids today. They were called retarded kids 120 years ago. Retarded, poor children. They did better on their national exams than privileged, bright kids. She, who was a single mother at the end of the 19th century in Italy, became Minister of Education. Why didn't we learn the lesson that hands-on education develops people in the best way, intellectually, democratically, innovatively? So we are the students of lots of innovators, and to be able to talk to young Greek leaders is an enormous privilege, because where did education start for the Western world, and to whom do we owe the greatest debt? When I talk about sampling philosophy, I only try to come close to what a Greek tradition is. So here, Vasiliki and I thought we could link up something about educational innovation from other parts of the world to see what this leadership wanted to do with it. Here's a picture of a little boy from first grade in a poor neighborhood in Mexico City. Mexico City is so poor that they don't make books out of cardboard, which they do in other places in Latin America. They make houses out of cardboard, and it's a rainy area. It's a desperately poor area. But the one good thing about Chalco is that it has a little Catholic school that's very well tended. And the Catholic school belongs to the Legionaries of Christ. I don't know if you know the Legionaries of Christ, but if you think about Opus Dei, think about 4 or 5 degrees to the right. Okay, these are very, very conservative right-wing people, but they are missionaries for their children. So anything that's good for their children is good for them, and they've been our best partners. This is The Little Prince, which they staged and memorized and played with and did costumes with in Chalco. This is just a short version of the philosophy of pretext. We use difficult texts. If you don't use a difficult text in school, kids get bored. Do you know the #1 reason for dropouts in the United States and in Mexico and in Colombia? I don't know what it is in Greece. You'll tell me. What's the #1 reason for dropouts? Huh?
They use, they have already money. I don't think that they need a higher education.
Oh, well, maybe they have money, but what about kids who don't have money? Do they not drop out of school? Yes, they do. And why do they drop out? They're bored. It's useless, and they're bored, right? So economic reasons are only the second or third reasons for dropouts. The first reason is boredom. And if you ask kids why they're bored, they say the stuff is too easy. Give difficult texts. Difficult texts And the text doesn't become the object of admiration. The text just becomes raw material for pretext. Use it. Okay? If everyone in the room has to use it, if everyone in the room has to make a choreography or a photo shoot, do you think all the choreographies will look the same or different? Vastly different. So if everyone is going to make a vastly different choreography, is there anyone in the room that's unnecessary, that wasn't interesting? No. When you use a text as a pretext for making art, everyone in the room is doing something interesting. No one is eliminable. There's no one you can bully. There's no one whom you want to stay home the next day. There's no one you will beat up. This is the best program we've found as an anti-bullying campaign. It's an anti-aggression campaign, not because we give sermons or speeches or talk about values, but because we show that everyone is different, and that's interesting. Okay? It's critical thinking. If you have to make something from something else, you're not just receiving, you're always producing, always critical thinking. If you make a dance from a sonnet, are you being critical? Are you doing critical thinking, or are you being creative? Both. You know as an artist that you're being both. But if you talk to academics, they will distinguish radically between critical thinking and creative thinking. If we want generations of innovative youth, we have to break down that distinction. Critical thinking is creative, creative thinking is critical, otherwise it doesn't work. And this last part is what we already talked about. When everyone is different, you admire everyone. And I learned from one of our greatest mentors in cultural agents, who's the ex-mayor of Bogota, Colombia, that the basic feeling of democracy is not tolerance. What happens when you tolerate somebody? What do you do when you tolerate somebody? You put up with them. Is that a positive feeling? No. You grit your teeth, you wait for them to stop talking, you put up with them. That's not the feeling of a democracy. In a democracy, you want to be interested in what someone else says. You want to really consider what they thought. You want to wait for everybody to talk. And the basic feeling of democracy, he says, is admiration. When we learn to admire everyone, then we have a chance to develop a society. Here is Nassima Mohammed's students in Zimbabwe dancing a scene from A Grain of Wheat by Ngugi, who's an important Kenyan novelist. This is the art gallery. So the parents came and saw how bright their children are, and everybody was proud of their children. This is in Brazil. A little girl just made her book of cardboard, very proud of her work. And this is in the University of Coahuila in Mexico, where the president of the university, the rector, got into all of our crazy activities too, and we have videos of him being the little prince and singing a duet with the fox, who's his friend. Because if we get buy-in from decision makers in public education, then we affect families, we affect teachers. We're doing the same activities in China. China is an entire world that is waking up to the importance of innovation in education and of democratic collaborations. Here we are in Cambridge because we are now promoters for Harvard's goodwill in Cambridge. You know, when Harvard needs to look like it's a good neighbor, it pulls out pretests and shows seventh graders that they're very bright because they can play with Shakespeare. So that's really the end of my general remarks. The only last remark I want to make is that there's no way to get what pretext is without playing with it. That's why when Vasiliki and I thought about doing something here at the forum, we said, let's do a workshop. I can say a few remarks, as I just did, to give the idea of it, but there's no way to feel the promise of this program unless you are on the line trying to figure out what dance move you're going to make with what line. All right. So thank you so much for your attention. I don't know if there are questions, but maybe we can save the questions for the workshop.
Even better.
Even better. And do we have some time for a coffee break?
For sure.
Good.
Of course.
Okay. Well, wonderful.
Can we do at least one quick question? Because
Okay.
we unfortunately have to leave. I have a question.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Oh,
It's
I'm
exceptional.
delighted. Go ahead.
Delighted you have to leave or?
No, that you have a question. I can't wait. Thank you. No, I'm devastated that you have to.
You mentioned that boredom is a significant reason. And from my experience as a teacher at a different level, I haven't had any experience with young kids. The variation of boredom that I experienced with students was not so much based on too easy, but too hard and therefore declared irrelevant. In particular, math and engineering is my area. Students would tend to have a response like, "What's this useful for?" And that was there, as I rationalized to myself, the basic defense mechanism for avoiding to deal with the things which are. Do you see any relevance of the younger children? Is the issue of relevance an issue, or are they too young to raise the question of quite what
Okay.
knowing about this?
Thank you. The issue of relevance seems to be more important for teachers because we're trying to figure out why they're not learning. Children are curious. One of the things, and I'm wondering even in your difficult courses in math and physics and science, if you made a challenge of turning a formula into a dance. It's because it's hard, students might want to take it on and say they did a better dance than you did.
That's easy.
That, you see? And if you say to them, I know you're going to do a better dance than I, they may come up with something. They may really crack their brains to come up with something because an artistic challenge puts them on the line. Here's the difference. When you ask professionals for a solution to this problem or that problem or the other problem, they can say, honestly, I don't know. The solution doesn't exist. If you ask an artist for a solution, an artist will very seldom say, I don't know. They'll say, let me think about it. When you put someone in the role of artist, the challenge is delicious. It's not an obstacle. I'll give you just one example from Bogota, okay? Because I told you that Mopus is one of my heroes. Does anybody know Bogota, Colombia? Did anyone ever try to travel there? Yeah? When? What year? Oh, 6 or 8 years. It's been a working city. Anybody try to travel there in the 80s or 90s? Okay, then you overrode all of the advice in the airports that said don't go to Bogota. Don't go to Bogota. It's the only country in the world.
Don't go out of the hotel room.
Don't go out of the hotel room. And you have to be in an armored car. Bogota was the most dangerous city in the world. What do you do? And Mopus, who is a philosopher and a mathematician, was elected in 1995. What do you do in a city that's so corrupt, so chaotic, so dangerous? What do you do? Can you make economic investments? The drug lords are running the city. Can you make an economic investment? Where's that money going to end up? Can you put more armed police on the street? The armed police are in the pockets of the drug lords too. What do you do in a city like that? All of the conventional measures didn't look promising. So Mopus was stuck for a while, and one of his aides said, "It's too late, boss. There's nothing to be done here. Time to bring out the clowns." Instead of getting offended, he said, "That's a good idea." And he hired 20 pantomime artists to replace 20 corrupt traffic cops in the middle of the city. Can you imagine a corrupt, crazy city with 20 skinny pantomime artists directing traffic? He made a party in the street. People started enjoying being on the street. They started seeing traffic lights and crosswalks as props for play. They started to enjoy the city. That was the icebreaker. And he made one artistic project after another. Because an artist, when he says, I'm stuck, I ask myself, what would an artist do? So this is one of the solutions to difficulty. Make it into a challenge for an artist. Okay? That's the proposal. We'll see if it works. You'll tell me next year if it works. Okay? But let's have some coffee and continue talking. Thank you.
Sorry, we have a little bit of a long drive.
We'll have a coffee break, about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll move for the workshop to room 408 in the fourth floor of 2 Arrow Street. It's not very far from here. You'll follow us.
Yes,